This is the Digital Trust Podcast. In every episode, we strive to bring support to those of you who serve on the front lines and in the trenches of data and technology. We endeavor to bring understanding to the under-resourced and underappreciated, help remove your stress, and provide relief to your pain. Welcome to the Digital Trust Podcast. Sit down with us as we give you hard-hitting advisory conversations to help you build digital trust with your stakeholders and clients, and actionable takeaways to help you become a digitally trustworthy organization.
Welcome again, everybody, to the Digital Trust Podcast. My name is Christian. I'm the host, and with me today, joining us all the way from Brussels, Belgium, it's none other than Dr. Manfred Boudreaux-Dehmer. He is the CIO of NATO, and it's so good to see you again, Manfred. Welcome to the show.
It's great to see you, Chris. And with the magic of virtual communication, it's not even that far in Brussels.
We shortened the distance, didn't we?
We did.
So I would like to start today. I think we're going to do a little bit of a series of conversations with you and I. And I'd like to get into the topic of leadership and what are some characteristics of a good leader. So for IT leaders and for cybersecurity leaders, what makes a good leader? What does good leadership look like in your opinion?
So I think there's a couple of different dimensions that when it comes to leadership. And so it almost sounds a bit overused, but it is authenticity, because I think as leaders, we need to be ourselves and we need to help people who are in our teams to be themselves, because I think only with authenticity can we do things that really matter, and can we bring the very, very best things to the table. So I think that a leader needs to do four things. I think number one is the leader needs to set the North Star, needs to set the vision for the team, and the vision needs to be big and grand and worthy to aspire to reach that vision, right? So this is not the standard business plan with that's the revenue that we want to make next year or the next 5 years. This really is we want to make a significant contribution to the world or to society. And so then this is the vision that we set for ourselves. I think the next thing, responsibility that a leader has is connect everybody's job with the vision that has been set out. Everyone in the organization needs to know, what do I have to do in order to help the organization reach that vision? And then the next thing that I think is what a leader needs to do is be a construction worker and remove debris that is on the road. So whenever you see that there is an inhibitor to efficiency, to moving faster, to doing things the right way, I think it's the responsibility of the leader to go ahead and pick up a shovel and get that thing out of the door. And then I think finally, and it shouldn't be last, but it's like everybody has got a personal fulfillment in life, in professional life as well. And I think it's the responsibility of the leader to help every person realize their fullest professional capacity to fulfill themselves professionally. So I think those are kind of the things. If I look at leadership, how I approach it, and how I've seen in the past very, very effective leaders, things that I find very important.
Mm-hmm. You're challenging me out of the gate here, Manfred, and what it sounds like to me is servant leadership is really what you're talking about here.
Yes.
I'm seeing you set the vision, help everybody to own their piece of the mission, remove obstacles, and empowerment. Those are the things that I'm taking away from that.
Yes, absolutely. Servant leadership is a concept that has been around for quite some time. And so I think it is exactly what I have found for me, a very, very effective way. There are different leadership styles. There's authoritarian, there's transformational, there is an inclusive leadership style. It's very interesting when we look at different cultures. And so I see differences between the business cultures in Europe, but also the business culture in North America. And even within North America, I saw a difference between the US and Canada. There's also a big difference, I think, between military and non-military. So now I have the privilege of observing my military colleagues a little bit more. And there is a special relationship that I think a commander has to the people who he commands that I see very prevalent on the military side because it's about life and death, right? If you're being told to do something, you need to be willing to risk your life for that. And so it requires a special relationship, in the military it is called command and control between superior commander and then somebody underneath. And so it's kind of interesting to see that in comparison to servant leadership, which seems to be the opposite, but there are some very interesting blends of the two that I've seen as well. So it's interesting to apply servant leadership in different mindsets and in different business or geographic cultures.
That is very powerful, and I think there's a lot to take away from military experience and the military leadership model, but I love what you're saying about servant leadership. Very powerful lessons there, and I appreciate you sharing that. On the subject of still, I would say, leadership and interpersonal relationships is the concept of interoperability. So in the context of NATO, Manfred, with your 32 distinct entities, the member nations that you're dealing with, how important is interoperability for you?
It's hugely important. It cannot possibly be overestimated. So interoperability is one of the fundamental cornerstones that what NATO is about, because you're basically putting your resources together as the 32 allies, and you pool your resources for the greater good, so that if there is an attack on the alliance, you fight that commonly together. And so with that is a deterrence and defense function, because the very fact that you have the military in place, even if you were never needing it, right? The very fact that it is there is a deterrence to an adversary. But what's at the heart of all of this is the fact that the systems need to be used together, because the function of togetherness is interoperability. So if you've got a particular weapon system and you've got ammunition and it does not fit from country A into a weapon, let's say, of country B, then that is a very, very basic interoperability problem that will prevent the alliance from having the strength that it needs. And so interoperability is a fundamental concept at NATO. And so if you take that on a technical perspective, systems need to be able to talk to each other. And that's, I think, where everybody else can relate to that, because even outside of NATO, because you've got systems, they're in different organizations, and they need to be able to talk to each other. And what's, again, at the heart of all of this is standards, and making sure that you've got protocols in place and technical standards in place to exchange data between various platforms. Now, that's the technical aspect, I think, of interoperability. Then there is a process aspect of interoperability, that you have standards, that you have agreed guidelines as to what you share, how often you share it, what's the process, what are the ramifications around it. And then on top of it, the third dimension, I would say, is a people aspect. So sharing data means that you extend trust, because you automatically, if you hand data over to somebody else, it means that you trust to somebody else that that data is handled in the right way, because otherwise you would not hand it over. And that people aspect of interoperability is also very, very important. The trust aspect, knowing that your data is in good hands as it reaches another point.
I really appreciate you laying that out in the NATO context, Manfred. And I wonder, for those that are listening that are maybe in a smaller, mid-size, even maybe a larger organization, not quite as far-reaching as NATO, what would you maybe say to them when it comes to interoperability in their context? My thoughts go towards supply chain risk and them dealing with third parties. How can interoperability and the principles from NATO help a person in that situation?
Mm-hmm. So I think if we again take the three dimensions, I think they can be applied, I think, in many, many different environments. So if we think of people, it's really important that you build a personal relationship with the entity that you want to exchange data with. I think in the end, and it goes into kind of digital trust that we're going to be talking a little bit later. You need to be convinced that the entity is the right one that you're handing your data over, right? So it's personal relationship, making sure that they have processes and controls in place that are there to protect the data. Then the next thing is processes and procedures so that there's an agreement as to what you're handing over, how it is being treated on the other side, how often do you do that, what are the ramifications if something goes wrong? If you have an incident, or if let's say you're handing data over to a supplier and the supplier has the incident, or a customer has an incident, what is the interaction between the different organizations? How do you inform each other? How do you help each other? How much do you share with each other regarding the incident? Those are all very sensitive things that should be talked about. And so the people perspective, again, is very important. And that feeds into the process perspective of making sure that you have an agreement and a document as to what do you share, that's something that can be built upon. And then on, again, the third layer is the technical layer, that you use a standard that's widely known, that has a digital signature, that has a trust mechanism attached to it, so that you know that the data that you send is going to arrive at the destination in a confidential way, and that it's trustworthy and that it is certified.
Perfect. I appreciate you laying that out. And we have literally probably 1 minute left in this episode, so I hesitate to ask one more question. So being mindful of the time, I want to address sort of a communication gap between IT leaders and business leaders in these organizations, talking to the same people. How would you maybe recommend that IT folks, IT leaders, can communicate better with business leaders and better align with the leadership of the business, and then vice versa for business leaders to better understand and support what IT is trying to achieve?
So how do you do it? Well, if you have to pick one, it's communication, right? Talk to each other and learn each other's language. Learn the language of the business. And when you talk to the business, don't talk in databases and servers and, cloud instances. Talk the language of the business, and then help people as there are technical concepts that need to be explained as to how they relate to specific business contexts.
Thank you so much for being mindful of the time there. We're going to land the plane. Thank you so much, Manfred, for sharing your wisdom with us today. And thank you to the viewers and listeners as well for being part of the conversation and spending your time with us. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for joining us today on the Digital Trust Podcast. If you found this conversation helpful, please share it with someone you care about. And if you'd like to receive our monthly newsletter, please click the link in the description to subscribe. And to put your mind at ease, our newsletter will include episode summaries with key points and actionable takeaways, plus a heads up on the upcoming episode guests. Rest assured, it won't be a spammy sales message, and we will never sell or share your information. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode.